that picture that you put up of me. I haven't seen that in such a long time. That was awesome. I'm really, thank you. I'm really pleased to be here to talk about some of the food justice and advocacy work that we're doing at Home and Community. Home and Community is a nonprofit that I founded about 14 years ago, and we were working in 40 states on housing policy at the time. And so we were really successful in getting people help to save their homes. And about 2 years ago, we started working on food justice. And that came about working in the housing area, public housing developments specifically. And we were on the ground building raised beds and talking to people about the food that was in their community. And this was all during the time a few years ago when we were getting a lot of information about obesity and the different public health issues that were going on around not having food. And so we started growing. And one of the things that we learned when we started growing, this is from our friends at Community Coalition in South Los Angeles, is that just a little bit south of here, you have 800,000 or so people with a handful of grocery stores. Now compare that to where we are now in downtown, the same number of grocery stores, 50,000 people. So that's math is not very good for us. And it's an issue, and it's not because grocery stores think there's crime or there are issues like that going on. It's because it's not profitable. And so you're not going to really do a lot to lure grocery stores into the community at this point. Of course, when you don't have fresh food, you have a lot of attendant problems, right? And so the bummer part, obviously, is that you're going to have all these physical ailments that come by not eating well. It's not just physical, though. It's mental health, and it's spiritual. It's the health of the community. It's all impacted by not having these resources. So what's going on there? Right now, there are a lot of nonprofits doing amazing work in South Los Angeles. You have nonprofits that are doing food justice, food policy. They're bringing food to individuals in the community. And they're doing amazing things with growing food even. There's a community-supported agriculture program that's starting up and a co-op in South Los Angeles. So you have all these amazing things happening. But you also have this. 1 in 6 people is food insecure, meaning that they don't know where their next meal is coming from. And this has been ongoing for the last couple of years in Los Angeles, in particular South Los Angeles. And so that's another statistic, another piece of the math that we have to actually address. So what we're doing is looking at this idea of food insecurity and thinking about ways to reduce it, going from food insecurity to food security. And there are 4 pieces of that. You can see those for yourself. But what we focus on is availability and access. And so availability, where's the food? Where is it growing? How much of it is there? Access, how do we get it to the people that need it? And so what we've done is we tried to reimagine the food system. Now, this is an idea that comes from technology, this concept of hacking the system. We're hacking the food system. We've done a lot of work there I am in the middle. We've done a lot of work at public housing developments, planting food, helping people grow in their communities. We have to do more than just this. It wasn't just about growing the food, it was making sure people that needed it have it. Now, you saw me fiddling around with this thing. I am actually not very good with technology, and that's going to play a part in the rest of what I talk about. But the thing is, I'm more of a reformed Luddite, I would say. You won't see me being completely afraid of technology, but you won't see me running across the open field in slow-mo to embrace it. So that's not going to happen. But it was something that I really had to understand in order to reimagine the system, as it were. Now, everything old is new again. So when you talk about reimagining the system, it's actually putting things in place that we've known about for a long time. We had this thing many of you might have heard of, World War II, and there were victory gardens that were done during that time because the government was off fighting the war, and they said you're kind of on your own in terms of food. So even in Los Angeles, people were growing food in their front yards and their backyards. They were creating these really healthy systems for sharing food. And they were, we like to say, OG, original green. They were doing it back in World War II. And indeed, up until that point, Los Angeles had this amazing goal of creating this agricultural empire. They were going to be growing all this food, and then after World War II, suburbanization and some other pesky factors got in the way, and they stopped doing that, looking at that as a goal. And as a result, this amazing statistic, every time I repeat it, I'm surprised every time, but only 2% of the food that's grown in our local food shed stays here. The other 98% goes elsewhere. Just let that sink in for a second. So what we want to do, again, is reimagine this food system. It's not all gloom and doom. There's stuff that can be done. There's stuff that's being done. And you've heard of guerrilla gardening. You may have even heard Ron Finley in his TED talk about this currency of food in the community. We really have to reimagine it and think of it as currency. It's a resource that needs to stay in the community, and it's what we can grow a healthy food system with. And you might be surprised to know that people are growing food in South Los Angeles. This is the Aguilar homestead. They've got chickens, the whole nine. They're growing in their front yard all this food. So they sustain themselves, but they're also sharing food with their neighbors. And they're not the only home in South Los Angeles that's doing this. This is, I mean, kind of incredible that they're doing all this growing. And they might be what you would call the invisible gardens. What they did in Chicago, there were several surveys that had gone out to the community about, are you getting fresh produce? Are you getting fresh food and vegetables? People were identifying that they were. And the researchers were thinking, well, what? You don't have a grocery store. How is that happening? There's not even farmers markets. And so they weren't getting, their information wasn't really matching up with what they knew to be on the ground. And so they went to Google Maps, and they saw these large public private gardens, the medium private gardens, small private gardens in these people's homes. And so that's how people were supplementing their food in these low-income communities, and why they were able to answer those surveys that way. So maps can tell us a lot about availability of food. And so we've been using maps. We've got lots of maps. You've probably seen Fallen Fruit, which is a really nice map that combines art practice as well. And they're fallen fruit, not to be confused with falling fruit, which is also another map that lets you know where public fruit and vegetables are in your community. We have farmers markets, we have all sorts of the gardens, LA gardens. So maps are out there, they're telling us that there's food. So we talk about, again, if you remember those circles, availability and access. This is availability, but alone it's not enough to just know where the food is. We also have a lot of people working on information so that residents and consumers, I should say, so that consumers know where the food is and how to get it. And so this is the access piece. This is the part where they're aggregating information, they're talking about what is out there and how it can get to you. And these are really wonderful tools, but alone they are also not enough. So we've envisioned something along the lines of an open tool for urban farmers like Refarm the city has. And they're out of Barcelona. What they've done is they've provided a platform where people can come together, consumers and producers and all sorts of people in between, and talk to each other about the best practices for providing food to people that need it or just want it. I mean, we all want food. So they provide for that. There we go. And this is just a slide that shows the simple way that they do this. So say a farmer comes in and says, hey, I'm growing this kind of food. And so they have the food and they input this into this platform. And then you have all this interchange and exchange of ideas where someone can come and say, well, you need a water source this way. Well, what do I do with my water when it's done? Someone else comes in and talks about how to do that. And so it's this really nice interface that a lot of people can use at one time and help each other. And we want to be able to do that with the food system. So who is we besides just home and community? What is this thing? Well, it's this awesome place in South Los Angeles called the Ghettostead. And it's represented by that red star there. And the Ghettostead, I have to tell you, it is the only co-working homestead for low-income food entrepreneurs in the area. I'm sure of it. So we wanted to find a niche, and that was it. And what we're working on there is having low-income food entrepreneurs in particular have a space to come to and learn about business practices. But beyond that, looking at the community and how you bring community in to learn about food practice, nutrition, growing, and as a hub for activities in the community, growing community. But specifically these food entrepreneurs, we want them to be able to create the businesses that talk about availability. And so knowing what's out there, these residents that are the food entrepreneurs, they're growing this food, they're the availability piece, and we want them to be able to promote themselves through a good business practice. What does a healthy food system look like? That's what these people are all working towards, what we're all working towards in the community. Healthy food system has a beginning with the producer and works its way all the way to the consumer, and then of course waste products at the end. But that one loop is consistent. There's nothing that falls off of that system. And you can point to each piece so you know what's being produced and you work it all the way around to the consumer. For us, that first piece is these low-income food entrepreneurs just miles away here. And they would be working through this whole system. They're the availability piece. They're working through this whole system to get the access piece with the end consumer. And I think that's really a lovely slide. It's really nice. It's got to look good, too. And so we have models for this in different areas. This place, Braddock in Pennsylvania, is so amazing. I found it through a Kickstarter campaign. And what they did was, it's probably 15 times smaller than what's going on down south of here, but it's a fantastic model because it's holistic, and you're talking about an ecosystem. I mean, we really should be looking at how we are organically relating all these issues. And so they have a farm, they're growing there, they're also training people to be entrepreneurs so that they can sell their food that they're growing. They have a restaurant, I mean, the art is amazing, but they have a restaurant that brings consumers from outside of the community. And so you're bringing resources in, not only just creating your own resources that stay there. And it's really lovely. And so you have this going on, and it's still got that continuous loop going on. You have the consumers and the producers all working together. And we want to be able to do that just south of here on a larger scale. Can't do it as simply as this. So what we need to do is bring in some technology, and that is going to be something along the lines of what they've done with Refarm, which is this open tools set. So this is where we're seeking help from outside. It will be this platform, much like the Refarm, the city platform, where a lot of people can come together and interface and help the producers learn how to market their wares, just like we're doing at the Ghettostead, but also making sure that we're combining those availability and access. So the aggregating software that you saw and all the maps, that's all in one place, in addition to people being able to talk about their planting schedules and share information about what are best practices. So again, there's a two-step process here. We have the first piece, the availability piece, which I clearly love saying over and over because it's making me stumble over the word. But the availability piece for those small producers, those low-income entrepreneurs that have this business that they're learning to develop. They're becoming certified. They're being able to put their wares out there and also to be identified, right? And then you have the second piece, which is the marketplace, and that's the consumer. How, and the access. How are they getting this food that is being produced and offered by these entrepreneurs? And again, we want people to be able to interact with the producer. We want people to be able to say, hey, what is your standard for growing? What's your ethos? What are you about? Because once you develop those relationships, your program, your system becomes sustainable. People keep going back to the same grower. And so we want to be able to create that in this platform as well. Now, the current system is not working. I don't want to bash this particular entity, But I think they're a good photo to get a point across that when you have a large singular entity like this coming in and talking about feeding a community, that's a huge red flag for a lot of reasons. Primarily, one is lack of choice. You have lack of choice, but then you also have lack of diversity because you don't have your local co-ops, you don't have your grocers, you don't have your farmers markets that push that out. When these entities come in, resources go out of the community, and that's not sustainable. And they will always have a lack of access to the fresh foods that they need. And so again, we're reimagining the system using some of these tools that we think are very easy to create. Security, and so it's a little Spanish. But yeah, so we have working in the garden, and you're reimagining the system, you're hacking the system, everything old is new. Then you get this awesome, this kid is so excited over her eggplant. I don't think I was ever excited about eggplant at that age. So this is really something, this is what we're striving for, this next generation. And they're gonna be using these tools like nothing, obviously. But food is one of the most important things that we can bring to the table for communities. And so finally, I just want to say, we've really embraced, me in particular, technology in ways that I would have never expected in terms of food access and availability. But again, everything old is new again, so each supports the other. It's not like they're mutually exclusive. And Napoleon had this quote that an army marches on its stomach. So I always feel like, if you want to be one of those people that sticks it to the man, think of gardening as one of the most subversive activities that you can do, bringing food to the table. And that's what we need to do to bring a healthy food system into South Los Angeles. Very simple, awesome to do. I'm so pleased that you're all able to hear me talk about this, and I hope you'll join us in this effort. Thank you.